Malacca, a small, unassuming state in Malaysia halfway between KL and Singapore. It's swampy, agriculturally challenging, and life there moves at a pretty leisurely pace. But it was once the centre of global trade, and it's still home to a pivotal chokepoint located along a shipping lane that provides the shortest route between Europe and the Far East. The Strait of Malacca, as it's known, remains a region of utmost strategic and economic importance to this day. But why is this, and how did it come to be? According to various reports, every year the Strait of Malacca facilitates at least 1 trillion in global trade, potentially up to 5 trillion, around 1/3 of the total volume of world trade, 2/3 of China's trade volume by sea, 40% of Japan's sea trade, 15 million barrels of oil per day, and 1/3 of all LNG volumes to China and Japan, and 80% of China's crude oil imports. So simply put, the Strait of Malacca is the shortest sea route between the Indian and Pacific Ocean. It is over 1/3 shorter than the closest alternative, and the strait is 900 kilometres long, but at its narrowest point it is a mere 2.7 kilometres wide. Yet over 200 ships pass through it each day, so it's no wonder civilizations have fought over it for the best part of 1,000 years. The Strait of Malacca's storyline stretches back a long way. So since before the 7th century, everything from ivory, richly decorated woven fabrics, fragrances and spices were all being traded by traders from as far away as Africa, Persia, India and Arabia. So just imagine, everywhere the glint of precious goods, distinctive smells, exotic trappings at the crossroad of cultures. But the location gets its name from the Malacca Sultanate, which came to power in 1400. This period of time coincided with the coming together of a Malay identity. And news of Malacca's success as a trade centre spread quickly. This perked up the ears of none other than Ming Dynasty China herself, where famed voyager Zheng He came on one of his 6 visits to Malacca starting around 1405. A Muslim himself, Admiral Zheng's journeys became known as the Ming Treasure Voyages. China's position then was as a silk powerhouse, which exhibited gifts of astonishing quality. In order to solidify the friendship between China and the Malays, legend says it was here where he escorted the Chinese princess Hung Li Po to be wed to the Sultan of Malacca. There's even a hill called Bukit China, literally Chinese Hill, where Admiral Zheng based his troops. A long-standing Chinese community still exists there today. And as a consequence of their newfound wealth, Malacca even developed a lucrative taxation system. So merchants arriving from the west, being India, Arabia, Persia, were taxed at 6%. Merchants from the east, however, being China, Ryukyu, Siam, were expected to offer gifts and sell 25% of their cargo at a discount, equivalent to 5% of their cargo's value. So, including gifts to local officials, this was roughly equivalent to the 6% taxes the merchants arriving from the west had to pay. So there's always been this emphasis on face and a gift-giving culture within Asia, but within a generation, Malacca rose to become astonishingly rich. So meanwhile, halfway across the world, Europe was kicking up a stink. Literally, there was no way to keep the food from spoiling easily. So this meant the Europeans were hungry for spices. The spices had 2 purposes. It kept the food from spoiling quickly, and it masked the smell when it did spoil. But spices were exorbitantly expensive. To put things in perspective, in medieval England, a pound of cloves cost nearly 5 days' wages, whilst a pound of saffron cost 1 month's wages. At the time, the spice trade was dominated by the Venetians, who controlled a long and windy route through India and Arabia. And a key source of spice production was the Malay archipelago. Portugal, on the brink of bankruptcy, was determined to change this by way of imperial expansion. So in 1511, after an attempt to resort to peaceful means by trading, Malacca was taken by the Portuguese in just over a month. As incentivisation went, regular soldiers received up to 4,000 cruzados each, while the captains received 20 to 30,000 each. For comparison, 1,000 cruzados was about the annual income of a count in Portugal at the time. So the Portuguese had transformed Malacca into a formidable fortress, but they were surrounded by hostile Malay states such as the Aceh and the Johor sultanates. And rather than dominating trade, Portuguese Malacca fragmented it along a number of ports along the strait. The Dutch were watching in nearby Aceh, today a province in Indonesia, waiting to exploit this discord. And with the rise of the Dutch East Indies Company, the Dutch now had a mandate to disrupt Portuguese control. So by 1641, the Dutch, together with the Malays, had laid siege to Malacca, rooting out the Portuguese and claiming Malacca as their own. Dutch rule was long-lived. The alliances and pacts they made with the surrounding sultanates saw a long stretch of peace. But the Dutch never intended to develop the city. They were much more concerned about developing Batavia, today Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia. So Malacca itself continued to decline in importance. Then, in 1824, Malacca became part of the Straits settlements in a swap deal with the British Empire when Britain traded Bencoolen for it. This tactic allowed the British to gain undisputed control over Singapore. And once again, Malacca was an afterthought. So fast forwarding to today, Singapore is most well known as the gatekeeper of the strait. However, the strait actually falls into the territorial waters of Malaysia and Indonesia. They arguably shoulder a disproportionate amount of cost, oftentimes in a testy relationship between the three. A love triangle, if you will. But the weight of influence from the likes of US, China, Japan, and Europe is a collective recipe for geopolitical flashpoints. So if you wish to bypass the Malacca Strait, the only options are detours, and it's hard to quantify exactly the total costs of disruption to the Malacca Strait. On one hand, some say the impact on direct shipping costs might be manageable in the short run, but over the longer term, global supply chain issues could occur. Insurance surcharges, risk premiums, inventory holding and obsolescence costs, costs of waiting for sub-assembly to arrive. Reputationally, all businesses operating using the Malacca Strait would be hit. And adding all these potential costs up, it's possible that this could be in the billions of US dollars. And it's all about trust in the efficiency and the stability of the Malacca Strait's ecosystem. And an impossible number of ships continue to route through it on a daily basis. But just when there seemed no other choice other than the strait, in comes an incredible proposal to circumvent it. For decades, even centuries, a proposal for a canal cutting through Thailand at its narrowest point has been discussed. The Thai canal proposal would cut journeys down by 1,200 kilometres and save roughly 3 to 5 days of shipping time. However, analysts suggest it could also upend regional stability. One assessment suggests India would feel insecure by being encircled by more naval power. And a good chunk of Singapore's livelihood might evaporate. China might be happy with a direct route through the Andaman Sea, but it's a touchy subject overall. And in an era where many are looking towards the development potential of Southeast Asia, it's fair to say, she who controls the straits controls the destiny of the world. So today, Malacca is more known for its bustling tourist trade rather than the spice trade. And where some would say semiconductors are becoming the oil of tomorrow, spices were the oil of yesterday. If that sounds confusing, I don't blame you. The course of history is often confusing, but perhaps the Malacca Strait is the method in the madness. A reminder of how, when one controls both logistics and supply, you have a true chokehold on the value chain. And again, thank you so much to Colin Priory for allowing me to make this video on his excellent Substack post. Be sure to check it out for a few good solid memes thrown in at the end too. I love Colin's writing and I look forward to seeing more from him. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, but until next time, have a good one.